with the news of the government's plans to roll out HS2, the momentum is gathering now for the Stop HS2 campaign group, who are fearing for their homes, which could be devastated with the high-speed rail network slicing through the countryside. Dozens of campaigners turned out at Yarlet on Thursday, along with UKIP leader Nigel Farage, who we'll hear from very soon. They were there to show their distaste at the proposals, citing many reasons why they do not need HS2. So we sent Steve Murphy along to meet some of the residents, and he started by asking TREVOR, FORRESTER and ROLFE PEARCE about how this would ruin their lives. And TREVOR told us that the campaign is well and truly in swing.
We've helped to set up 19 groups throughout the whole of Staffordshire, and we've joined Staffordshire together under one separate loose coalition called a SAGA, which is all Staffordshire action groups against HS2.
OK, and Ralph, when did you guys first start talking about this?
Well, to be fair, we started talking about it a couple of years ago, but it was very hard to get anybody to physically accept what we were saying, that this was going to come through and it's going to cause a huge amount of damage. But of late, since the actual announcement of HS2, everybody's sort of woken up, and we've been very lucky in the fact that we've been able to help people understand what's happening to them, because HS2 have been absolutely nowhere.
You recently told me one day you woke up fine, everything was great, the world was rosy, and then the next day you had the shock of your life. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, I received a call from a friend to say that the HS2 Phase 2 had been released, and it was running right through the middle of industry. And right through the middle of industry, which is a beautiful old village and town, we have a 600-metre long viaduct, which will be 15 metres close to 5 stories high, with a train running through that's going to be running at the rate of 110 decibels, which is Concorde takeoff noise level. And this thing, we're told, is going to run 14 times per hour each way. So what we finish up with is one run through every 4 minutes, and this is happening throughout the whole of Staffordshire, and that's why we've decided to work against it. It's a campaign to stop HS2, not to mitigate it.
Your property is going to be affected. How is this going to affect the villages itself of industry?
It's going to completely change their lives, but one of the major issues is when everyone says that it's not going to happen for 15, 20 years, we have the problem today. Because on the 29th, and all of these areas throughout the whole of Staffordshire, just like Phase 1, the properties were completely devalued. Some properties in Marston, where we're going to show UKIP exactly what's going on, properties in Marston are worthless, totally worthless, which we'll show you when you go down there. Properties in Industry have reduced in value dramatically. Properties in Great Hayward, properties in Whittington, properties in Kings Bromley, properties in Swinnerton. And we're going to fight to protect the lands, the aristocratic lands, and we're going to fight to protect the lands of the small man. But this is a scheme that is absolutely unnecessary. We don't need a high-speed rail. It's a European thing. We do not need it. David Cameron makes the claim that the French have got it, so we must have it. But this is going to ruin lives, thousands of lives, and cost absolutely billions. Every home, it'll cost £1,500. Every single constituency will be £51 million, and only 15% of the people will get to use it. If you live in Manchester, if you live in Liverpool, if you live in Birmingham, and you live in London, great. But everybody doesn't. We live in Staffordshire, and there's no benefit to Staffordshire whatsoever.
Ralph, over your neck of the woods in the Haywoods, how far is this from your front door?
Well, it's quite interesting with the Haywoods, because the Haywoods already has the West Coast Main Line running along the one side of it. On the other side of it, it's got the A51. And what they've actually done now is it's going to run straight across the other side. We're now a great big infrastructure traffic island. And if you think that, if you had £200,000 to spend on a home, you've got to ask yourself, would you buy a home there? And the answer is no. So what we're looking at is the slow, sure death of communities. The schools are going to start closing, the businesses are going to start closing down, people are not going to want to spend their money to come and live in what before was a really nice place to live. Places like Middleton, near Alton Towers, they haven't sold a property nearly in 3 years there. Now, that's because the estate agents are turning around and saying, well, I'm sorry, because of the blight that is there, we're not prepared to put a mortgage on that property, so you can't get a mortgage. Now, that means you're reliant on somebody coming along and offering you a cash value. That's your life savings. And some people are relying on that for their retirement, and all of a sudden, they're now up in the air, HS2 are nowhere, they're not telling them what's going to happen or how things are going forward. They want to sell their property to fund their retirement. They can't do it because nobody will buy their houses. And yet, a property bond has been put on the table by the action groups, the national action groups, which basically says whatever the blight is by the end of the construction period, we will guarantee to pay the difference, which means that everybody can buy and sell and carry on their normal life. But what HS2 has done to everybody is whole sections of the community. We're talking about 320,000 homes up and down the route. Their whole life has just been thrown up into the air, and it's stuck in the air. And you've got to imagine what that might be like for thousands of different ordinary people. And these aren't different people. They're taxpayers, they're strivers, they're the people who do the right thing. These are the people who've paid their mortgages. You know, if you lose £50,000 of value on your home, that's £50,000 worth of your wages and interest payments and that sort of thing on your mortgages every year. And that's a lot of money to a lot of people, especially if they're funding their health care out of that. And the whole of the process around HS2 and the government's working of the process means that 95% of the people who were blighted by HS2 are not covered by any compensation.
Have the government so far yet come out and gone, this is going to happen and we're going to give you this in compensation? Have they released anything like that to you guys yet at all?
To give you some idea, we posed a question to the government, and one of those questions was, how many properties will you have to take in Staffordshire as compulsory purchase? How many properties are within what they term the 60-metre band where they may pay out? How many properties are within the 100-metre band where they may pay out but with great difficulty? How many properties are within the 500-metre band? And the answer came back, we have not calculated that yet. So how can this government even attempt to look at a cost of anything of this nature, right, without even knowing what the cost is going to be in terms of blighted properties? We don't believe that blight has a distance. It's not 50 metres, 100 metres. Blight is about perceived market value, and it's about an area, and if you're in that area, you are blighted. And if you want to sell your property, you cannot sell it, unfortunately.
Now, on Thursday at Yarlet, UKIP's MEP representative for the West Midlands, Mike NATTRASS, was also on hand to support the residents, and he told Stafford's XLFM what HS2 will cost each and every one of us in the long run.
Every family in the UK, £2,600. That's per household. So that is ridiculous. The price is ridiculous. And it's all to shave 15 minutes off a journey time to London from Birmingham, which isn't worth it. Frankly, nobody wants that. But worse than that, it's taking people out of the West Midlands to London, so they'll be commuting out of the area. What we want to do is generate industry in the West Midlands, not take people out of it to work in London.
Why can't they upgrade the existing railway lines that are already there?
But that is our policy, to upgrade the existing railway lines. It's possible to do it, and we have a plan for that, extending the trains that are used. And people say that can't be done, but it can be done if you do it correctly. And we have a plan for all of that. What we need is local services improving, and also looking at lengthening platforms and simple projects like that, which will mean that local trains can carry more people.
And UKIP were well represented at Thursday's get-together in Yarlet in Stafford, and the candidate for Stafford Trent Valley, Andrew Carrington, was on hand as well, and he told us why he was so supportive.
We felt we wanted to join here today because UKIP's the only party that's actually against HS2. Well, where we stand at the moment is, well, one, the country can't afford it. I mean, it's the biggest white elephant that's ever been dreamt up. As a local Stafford person, Stafford's getting all the pain and absolutely no gain. It's going right through the village, and through the county. If we want to if we want to use it, we've either got to go back up north or else into Birmingham, from Birmingham to the exchange. But that's looking at it selfishly. But as a country, we haven't got the money to spend. If we want to get the economy going, and particularly the local economy, we've got things like Stafford East Bypass. The money could be spent there rather than on just this big, well, it's a glorious, somebody's glory idea, isn't it, to sort of say, well, this is what we've created, which is wrong.
Yeah. What I can't understand is, why can't they use the existing railways that are already there, upgrade them? Why did it have to start ploughing these tracks through some beautiful countryside?
Well, that's one of my problems, because they say we're being told it's a capacity problem, but the way I see it, I travel to London quite a lot. Virgin are doing a very good, absolutely offer a very good service. You've got a half-hourly service to London, takes you 1 hour 20 minutes. You've got price variations that if you're a senior citizen like myself, you can actually get good discounts, and students. So there are discounts available. It's not just the headline price. On top of that, on top of Virgin, you've got London Midland trains that run. So in between, you're probably getting an hour, 4 trains to London, which is more than adequate. You know, and a journey time on Virgin is 1 hour 20 minutes, and on London Midland, because it stops at other stations, but it is a local stopping train to London, takes 2 hours, neither of which are unreasonable. And why do we want to shorten it by 10 minutes?
Do you really think people are going to use it as much as they think they are?
Well, if things stand as they are, with Virgin still operating on the West Coast line, I actually don't think people will use it, because you're not going to save yourself a lot. I do suspect that they're going to downgrade the main line, you know, the actual existing main line, to put it to a longer journey time. So they'll make it a stopping train. So they'll make that 2 to 2.5 hours to get to London, because it'll stop at all stations, to try and push people who want to get there in the existing time onto HS2.
Yeah, forcing people onto the new trains, so making the lives.
Yeah, so they've got to use it. And as I say, we've already got an excellent railway system. And as you say, we could upgrade it. We can add extra lines, put an extra, a fast line, slow line. There is a width there, in the majority of cases, to actually take extra lines.
Whether you like this or not, the only thing that will stop HS2 is politics. Because what is really interesting is that one party's interests are dominated by this line, and that's the Conservative Party, all the way through the wealthy bits of North London, well, apart from Tatton, of course, where they're going to reroute the line. But it's the Conservative Party all the way up this line. Now, in Buckinghamshire, over the last 18 months, there have been 5 by-elections in district and county council elections. UKIP has averaged 30% of the vote. If we start to get a bit higher, and if we start to win district and county council seats up and down this line, you will then have a mass of Tory MPs who realise that unless that policy changes, they're losing their seats next time round. And political pressure is the only way we'll stop HS2, in my opinion.
I was hoping to catch a lady before she left, but she's disappeared, and I've got to try and get in contact with her. She had an interesting story that her house is not even recognised on the route. She's trying to prove it with Google Maps and stuff where she lives. The government are not listening. How can she sort of go, hang on a minute, I'm being wiped off the face of the earth and you're not even listening to me?
I don't know the answer to that, because I heard the same story from the same lady. I was completely mystified by it. The truth of it is that whenever you get a massive project like this, the interests of the little people don't really matter.
Interesting thoughts from UKIP leader Nigel Farage talking with Steve Murphy on Thursday at Marston. We also caught up with Councillor Tom Harris, Stafford Borough Councillor Tom Harris from the Green Party, who believes that the proposals just don't stack up for HS2.
The data that the Green Party has shows that up to a certain speed, which I believe is possibly around 200 miles an hour, that's basically the threshold whereby the speed and the savings in energy stops. The proposal, I believe, for HS2 is 225 miles an hour top speeds. Because, of course, once you get up to those very, very high speeds, the amount of energy you have to expend in order to increase the speed rises exponentially. So we're talking about a tremendous amount of energy being used, not only for very little gain, but also at the end of the day, it's also going to end up adding to our total emissions negatively.
What about the concern and the impact on the countryside? HS2 has a proposed route through our part of the world here in Staffordshire, and there's also concern in the Chilterns as well about the impact on our heritage and countryside. What's your view on the route, Tom, and the impact on our beautiful countryside?
It is absolutely shocking that this government, particularly the Conservative leadership of this government, has agreed to vandalise vast swathes of the British countryside. You'd have thought, and I know that there are plenty of Conservative MPs who are rebelling through places like Oxfordshire and Warwickshire, and quite rightly too. Of course, there's a huge amount of habitat which will be lost and never regained, and I just cannot believe that there could not have been a better route, a less damaging route, a route with less impact, that may perhaps have gone a little bit further, or had to take the odd extra long curve to avoid things. But it doesn't seem to be it doesn't seem to have been of interest to the government. I mean, the argument was put, which I think is a very strong argument, and which which has been shown to be very successful in similar recent projects in Germany. For example, the new ICE line between Frankfurt and Cologne, which only opened, I think, about 10 years ago. The majority of the track runs parallel to the motorway. You've already got an area where it's, let's face it, it's a motorway. It's not going to be an area of outstanding beauty anymore. And so it does make an awful lot of sense to be able to connect things in that manner. And the government clearly just hasn't had preserving the wildlife and the natural beauty as a very high priority.
Borough Councillor Tom Harris from the Green Party, Stafford Borough Councillor Tom Harris. Finally, let's hear from Nigel Farage, again the UKIP leader, who gave quite a rousing speech to the residents of Stafford at Thursday when they went to one of the sites, Marston, which is going to be devastated by this HS2 route, which is going to slice through large parts of Staffordshire countryside. He was on hand to rally the troops.
The farm you see over to my right and your left is going to be bulldozed. The houses to your left, bulldozed. At the back of us, you can see that is going to be the height of the track as it comes through here. It's absolutely appalling. Millions of tons of earth have got to be shifted from this area. The construction is just going to be hideous. The lives of people are going to be devastated for decades.
For no good reason.
For no good reason, absolutely. We cannot afford this. There's no business case, there's no environmental case, and there's no justification. And the bottom line is we can't afford it. As a nation, we cannot afford it anymore. So I want to hand over to Nigel, who's been very, very good to be here with us today and to alter his schedule at the last minute. You were planning to do lots of other things, Nigel, and we really appreciate...
No, standing in a very cold field's lovely.
I'll tell you what, well, we invited all the others, and they didn't turn up. They're not here, are they? So at the end of the day, it's important that we recognise the fact that Nigel made the effort to come here today. So thank you very much, Nigel.
Well, Rolf, listen, thank you very much for inviting me, and well done to you guys for getting 19 different groups together and getting some focus to this. I'm going to be next week down in Great Missenden, where, of course, we face the same problem. Now, sometimes in life, we have to accept in the modern world that ugly, unpleasant things happen. Power stations have to be built. Rather than wind turbines, but that's a different protest, all right? We sometimes have to accept ugly if there's a case for ugly and living in the modern world. I have to be honest, even though I'd read and thought about HS2, I hadn't until I arrived here today and saw that crane, realised
tells the story
graphically, this is not ugly, this is astonishingly appalling. And I simply cannot believe what I'm seeing. So thank you for doing that, and my huge sympathy for both these houses. However, it's not over yet. Now, you could argue, and some will argue, that the reason this is all happening is because it was all agreed at European level some years ago. and that because we have three political parties who believe in the European project, that's why nobody will oppose it. Whether that's the reason or not, frankly, is irrelevant. Frankly, is irrelevant. The point is that our government and our opposition have decided this has to be built. We haven't got 32 million quid. We're skint.
Billion.
We're skint.
Billion quid.
Billion.
What did I say?
Million.
Well, it's cold. It's cold, all right? You know, when it's this cold, you get the odd mess up. Or maybe lunch at the Greyhound did it, I'm not sure. 32 billion. We haven't got 32 billion. We will have to, of course, borrow the money to pay for the project. And our argument is that rather than 32 billion being spent on a railway line that'll be designed purely for the wealthy, we'd be better off spending a third of that money upgrading all the rail network in this country for the benefit of millions.
Yes.
And certainly I was in the southwest earlier on this week, where Penzance to London is now slower than it was before the First World War. Seriously, slower now than it was 100 years ago because of health and safety rules and the fact the track's not been upgraded. So if we want to have better rail networks in Britain, and I think we do want better rail networks, you certainly wouldn't blow the money on this. The other argument that's been made is that business-wise, we have a north-south divide in this country, which we all understand, and that by building this line, it will reinvigorate business in the north of England. Well, it certainly won't reinvigorate business in Staffordshire.
No.
Because trains coming through at a couple of hundred miles an hour,
250.
Is not going to help on a good day. It's not going to help. The experience of the French with this is very interesting. I mean, France obviously is a much bigger country than ours, and they've got the TGV network. When they completed the Paris-Marseille connection, it reduced the journey time from Marseille to Paris from 6 hours to 3 hours. Did that reinvigorate and help boost business in Marseille? I tell you what it did. It drove more business to Paris.
Yes.
Because suddenly, for the businessman, Paris was there for a day trip and back. The Manchester, I go to Manchester a lot. It is 2 hours, 2 minutes from Euston Station right to the heart of Manchester. Time isn't the problem to Manchester, capacity may be. And maybe there's an argument for longer trains. Maybe there's an argument for bigger stations. But if we reduce it to 78 minutes, all it will do is drive yet more business down towards the south.
Yes, great.
Now, the question, I guess, that all of you involved in these groups are asking is, how do we get this madness stopped? Given that there's no economic case for it, given that there's no business case for it. Well, one route, of course, is the legal route. And clearly, all the action groups have to do what they can to pursue the legal route. My experience of the legal route is that to expect to win against government pursuing the legal route presupposes the independence of our judiciary before you start. But I'm not saying you shouldn't try, you should try.
When we will.
And it's going to be terribly expensive, and that may help to delay it a little bit. But what I've learned about the way that politics in Britain works and about decisions that get made is there's only one thing that politicians really fear, and that's losing their seats. It does concentrate the mind wonderfully. Now, I really genuinely don't want to be party political, but I'm actually going to have to be. In Buckinghamshire, in the last 18 months, there have been 5 by-elections. 5 district and county council by-elections. UKIP's average score in those 5 by-elections is 29% of the vote. We've come a close second to the Conservatives in all 5 of those by-elections. Now, you might have noticed that if you follow up the HS2 route, you go through some quite wealthy bits of North London, Tory constituencies. Buckinghamshire, Tory constituencies. Northamptonshire, Tory constituencies. Warwickshire, Tory constituencies. Staffordshire, Tory constituencies. Then you get to Cheshire, and they've decided to go round my Chancellor's constituency. But the one party that is the most vulnerable on this is the Conservative Party and is the current Prime Minister. Now, it is likely that he's still going to be there for another 2 years. And if on the 2nd of May, UKIP win a whole slew of county council seats up and down the length of this HS2 line, believe you me, there'll be an awful lot of Conservative sitting members of Parliament whose minds will be beautifully concentrated. And I honestly think that we are the party who, through political pressure, can get this stopped, because if they fear this project alone could cost them 20 or 30 seats and cost them the next election, they will put it on ice, they will stop it. So I am against HS2 for the reasons I've said, and I believe politically UKIP can help your campaign, and I promise you we will do our very best to help you, and I would ask you on May the 2nd to do your very best to help us.
Nigel, can I just thank Nigel for coming and for all of those words. And one thing that's important, you know, in the whole of this is that they've invaded Staffordshire. And because they've invaded Staffordshire, what we've managed to do is invigorate the whole of the south. And with meetings like this that we would like to roll out, we're apolitical, but with meetings like this that we would like to roll out, from our point of view, it can be stopped. The economic case is wrong. If the government would accept the blight that's up and down this line, anything between 15 and 20 billion more that they won't accept, load that onto the business plan and the Chancellor may run away.
You'll have to.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
guys.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.